Hello and welcome to another episode of Philippa Squared, Parenting by Design. You're joining myself, Philippa Scott, and my beautiful co-host, Pippa Cox. Hi, Pippa.
Hello, Philippa. How are you today?
Fabulous, if a little freezing. My toes and my fingers have not warmed up yet today, not since I
Yes,
got out of bed and did the chooks.
it's amazing,
Anyway,
isn't it?
it's
It's so cold.
freezing. Um,
It's not
and
cold in a place like America, though, is it?
No, we
Not.
are
It's in the
joined
middle of summer.
today. We're joined today by Tiffani Domicos. And I think I said that wrong, even though the first time I got it right. Did I get that right?
Right. Yeah,
I
you got it
did.
right. Yeah.
Yay. Fabulous. And Tiffani is she's a mental health therapist, ex-teacher, mother of one, and she's joining us today to talk about parenting, motherhood, the overwhelm, the guilt, all the things that come often with parenting. So welcome, Tiffani.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we're thrilled that you could join us. Would you tell us a little about your journey and how you came to be doing the work you do now?
Yeah, sure. So, I became a therapist I graduated in 2008 and went right into community mental health work, kind of the big T traumas that people talk about in grad school. That was my bread and butter every day. I worked with adults and kids and families, and really just found a lot of gratification out of working with kids and families, and specifically working with parents and parents who were trying to parent differently than what they had been raised being parented. And so I loved that work. And so I really dug into how could I do more of this? How can I support parents? So I then worked in the disability community, where I was able to support parents and folks who are going through the disability process in our state. Um, and then most recently, in the last couple of years, I opened Holy Living Coaching and Consulting to specifically focus on supporting parents. And that came around because I had been working with kids and families for over 10 years. Um, and loved that work in my private practice. And then I became a mom and loved being a mom. I loved having a baby. And about 18 months in, I started noticing things that my clients would talk about in myself. And I was needing to implement the things that I taught into my own life. And I found it really hard. It was not as easy as I had expected it to be, even with 10 years of experience as a therapist under my belt. And and so I just thought, gosh, if this is hard for me, this is really hard for other parents too. This is a human experience of motherhood that we need more community around. We need moms to know that it's normal to feel angry at your child, to get overwhelmed, to be at your wit's end because you're sleep deprived for 18 months, because at that point I was sleep deprived for 18 months. And so I really looked and worked with my clients to say, what are the themes? What are the themes of the things that I'm teaching and that I'm talking about? And so I kind of experimented, obviously with permission of my clients, on what will work, like what are the things that are working. And they gave me really great insight into the patterns that they use that have been really helpful for them. And so I developed a model that I'm hoping to put into an online course, but for right now, I'm working with clients one-on-one to find a place of joy and contentment in motherhood, even in the midst of overwhelm, even in the midst of frustration, that is very, very normal in motherhood.
Amazing. Wow. Well, and
That's
you hit the nail on the head, right? Like so much of this is harder than we think it's going to be. I'm among my many skills, I'm currently doing a training course on sleep coaching because I want to
yes.
offer sleep coaching as part of, my services. And it was really interesting talking to, the students and the trainer just a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the idea that often we aren't very well prepared for parenting. And a lot of parents are not even, like, they forget that actually at nighttime they're still a parent and there's nighttime parenting. And that wasn't anything anyone ever explained. No, they weren't prepared for that. They saw, they're thinking, oh yeah, I gotta take my kid out in the pram to the park, and I gotta do the feeding and the changing and the bathing and all that stuff. But what about the nighttime stuff? And we've just come off a week of gastro in our house, and my 21-year-old is a single mum, so thankfully she lives on the property with us. And so I was getting calls throughout the night. She's vomited again, can you come help me?
Yep.
That nighttime parenting takes us by surprise, right? And then the sleep deprivation and all those things can make it so overwhelming. And sleep deprivation on its own can cause us to exhibit bipolar symptoms, right? So we are not as regulated when we're sleep deprived as what we are in a normal, well rested space. So it just makes everything harder, doesn't it?
For sure, for sure.
So what are some of the patterns that you were noticing?
Yeah, great question. So, what I work with my clients on is four main things. So what I see is folks are often triggered either by lots of things, but sometimes it's overwhelm, sometimes it's overstimulation, sometimes it's that sleep deprivation. And that the very first thing to do is to calm their own nervous system. It's sort of put your own oxygen mask on. And we hear this as moms, I think, and there can be some guilt around like, oh, I'm not taking care of myself, and so therefore I can't take care of my baby. But I try to really normalize with clients, you know what? It's really normal for moms to give up themselves for their baby. That's what you were made to do. You literally gave up your body to birth a child, to birth another human, and using your body to be the safe place for them. So of course you forgot to take care of yourself. It's okay. But teaching them skills, helping them understand what are their triggers, what are the spaces where they really are kind of in that fight or flight mode and their nervous system is offline, and they're trying to parent at the same time. And that's usually where the clients that I work with, there's that kind of rub or explosion where they're like, I'm failing as a parent because I can't figure this thing out. And so we dig into some of their own childhood, but really like what's going on for you, what's happening in your body, and then what will help. So for a lot of people, I know that, anger, rage is a big one for moms. Um, and, uh, and there are lots of people, I don't know what you do with your clients, but there are lots of people that say, deep breaths, just deep breaths and it'll go away. But anger doesn't really work that way, right? It's like this full body experience. And so pretending that deep breathing and making it go away is going to make it go away, it actually like creates this pressure cooker and there's bigger explosions, right? And so educating them about what those different emotions kind of need, like rage really needs activity. You need to move your body. You need to do something physical. So what is that thing? And then I give them challenges to experiment. This week experiment on what it's like to, when you're triggered, literally like do jumping jacks, up and down, do jumping jacks, or do squats, or do push-ups. Even if your kid is melting down at the time, they're safe, they're in a safe space, make sure that they're in a safe space. But so yeah, finding what works for them. So really looking at that soothing thing first before they go from trigger to response, kind of trying to short circuit with this pattern of soothing themselves And then giving them skills around observation and assessment. So observing themselves, observing what are those things that are triggering them? Where does that come from? How did it get there? How often is it happening? Is it from their childhood? Is it from a past relationship? What are the narratives kind of around that? And let's kind of soften those lines of trigger so that you can choose your response. What is the response you want? And how do you get yourself there? And sometimes the responses that we want to give aren't always realistic for our personality and for our kind of makeup. And so I work with women, helping them kind of understand that your personality is part of what makes you a great mom. Your personality is what makes you a good fit for this kid. So how can you use that in your responses, whether that's a silly response or it's a tender and compassionate response in the moment. Yeah, and being able to choose that. So the acronym is SOAR, SOAR, soothe, observe, assess, respond, to short circuit that trigger between the triggering event into the knee-jerk response. We want to be able to choose that response by going through this process. And sometimes that happens every day. Sometimes people can do it a couple of times and they kind of get it. Their nervous system is a little more pliable. It just kind of depends on the person. So those are the big patterns that I noticed.
That's beautiful. That's
We
beautiful.
talk a lot about the oxygen mask, don't we, Pippa, and putting it on ourselves first. And I I know with my own clients, we talk about the difference between anger and trauma rage. And the fact that one is a response potentially, and one is actually a reaction, and that if we can have that slow bubble of frustration or resentment that turns into anger, and that's normal anger, it can be managed. But identifying when we have trauma anger or rage that is like lit match to petrol, and it just goes all of a sudden, nobody sees it coming, nobody can control it. And that comes from a far deeper place, that and understanding that that's what's happening and that you need some extra support and to be able to deal with that, because it's also the difference between reacting and responding, right? So we all want to respond from our conscious idea of who we want to be as a parent. And this is part of where the whole name and everything else came from, wasn't it, Pippa? This idea that we have these unconscious scripts that we parent from, that come from our past, our genetics, how we were brought up, all of that stuff is sitting there. And when shit hits the fan, whether it's metaphorical or not, it is our unconscious scripting that causes us to react. And the ideal scenario is to get, and I was talking to this, to a dad about this yesterday, the idea that we're going from taking those, what is consciously our second thought to begin with. So our first thought is to just react. Our second thought is how we want to respond. So it's about taking those second thoughts and putting them in to the unconscious so that they become our first response, rather than the one that we go, oh, shit, I should have done that. Like, why didn't I do that? And that's where the guilt and all the other stuff come in, right? The sense of failure.
I love this. Yep, exactly. And I love what you're talking about there. And it's also about the intention. So I see that there's a problem. I see that there's a better way of living my life, of living my family's life. Because as parents, we're leaders, yeah? We're leaders of a family, and that permeates through society. And the self-awareness, so you've got the intention that there must be a better way, and the self-awareness I found in my coaching is massive, isn't it? Because when you've got the intention that I think I see a better way, so you reach out for help and to develop those skills of self-awareness of what our thoughts are, what is triggering us. and then we can do something about it. I love it.
Yeah,
And
me
this is
too.
where we really get to be the people that we were meant to be, that we were born to be.
Mm-hmm.
We were born pure love. We were born pure light.
Mm-hmm.
You
But it's
know,
not
it's,
without work, right? It takes, I mean, what you're talking about is you're literally rewiring your own brain and your body responses to
yeah,
that stimulus. And I think that's a lot of people think that they're going to come and we're going to have a magic, I don't know, maybe you don't get this. I get this sometimes. Do you have a magic pill for me? Is there
yeah,
just one thing that I can do? Or
yeah,
maybe I'm just a bad person and I'm bad at this and that's why this is happening. And and so I think giving people the knowledge and insight that gosh, everyone deals with this. And anyone who says that they don't are probably selling you something. You know, this is
or in
something
full
that
denial.
right, or in denial, yes, or neglectful, maybe.
Yeah, and
Um,
totally disassociated.
yeah. But this is something universal, and that to your point, it makes us better people. It makes us better humans, but also it makes us better family leaders. I love that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And you said that, right, that it does take work. It's
Mhm.
not just, yes, I've realized that I have a problem. It takes daily work
Mhm.
because it's through that repetition of doing an action, whether it's a thought, whether it's a feeling, whether it's adjusting the way that we hold ourselves, the way that we pause
Mhm.
before we respond. It's
Mhm.
all about repetition and developing that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we want to be fit, we go to a gym,
That's
but do
right.
we start off with really strong muscles? No, it's through that
Right.
constant repetition that
Mhm.
we develop that muscle. And this is what um, being the best person you could possibly be and the best mother, the best father you can possibly be does.
Yeah.
I love
Agree.
it.
Yeah.
I
Love
think
it.
I love that you talked, Pippa, about intention, because it really is about intention. And intentions are set when we understand what's truly important to us. And we talked a few episodes back about consistency in parenting, and that to it comes from understanding what your values are, right? And really thinking about, what are my values and how do I align my values with my intentions so that I have a long-term game plan. In my
Mhm.
parenting program, it's the very first module,
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
need you to know what your own values are. Most people have never sat down and talked about this as parents or as a couple. What are your
Yeah.
values? How do you
Yes.
Mm,
know what kind of 20-year-old you want to be sitting across the table from? Right? If you don't know
Yeah.
what's
yeah.
important to you, and then you don't know how to get there. It's like having a roadmap,
Mhm.
right? If you don't know the
Mhm.
destination, the map's of no use to you, right? Because you might as well just go anywhere.
Mhm.
um so really thinking about what your values are and then setting your intentions around your parenting really helps, because when it is hard, you need to remember, well, what am I trying to do here? Because there are hard
Yeah.
times, right? It is, and
Yeah.
infancy, I'm sorry, everyone, but infancy is the easy bit. When you get to
Yeah.
teenage years, if you don't know what your intentions are for that person that you are trying to help raise, then you are fucked, right? Because it can go anywhere. And you have to
Yeah.
understand what battles you need to win, what battles
Mhm.
you can afford to lose, and you have to
Mhm.
understand what acceptance looks like. And because and
Mhm.
I talk about this with teenage mums of teenagers. If you have no relationship with that child, you have no impact, you have no influence, and you've lost everything. So acceptance is
Yeah.
a
And it's
big
about
part of it all.
is huge. And it's about being respectful, isn't it? Instead, and as we were talking about in a previous episode, Tiffani, we were talking about laying boundaries and how important that is with your values, your beliefs, your parenting style, and your it all comes together in a beautiful little package that makes life a lot easier for you.
Yeah.
And like we all have values.
Yeah.
They guide our decision making. They guide what we're buying in the supermarket. They guide our
Well,
lives
whether
on a
you are
minute.
aware of them or not, right?
Absolutely. And it's when we get awareness of our values
Yeah.
that we gain that clarity of that self-awareness of who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think it starts early, right? You're talking about if you don't have a relationship with a teenager, you don't have impact, but that starts when they're 2 and when they're 6 and when they're 9 and all of those values. And so I've worked with parents of teenagers and I've worked with teenagers themselves um and I don't think that it's ever too late to repair a relationship. I don't think it's ever too late to work on things and to make it better with your kid, no matter how old or young they are. Um, but it gets harder, right? And there's more impact the longer that folks wait to bring this awareness to their consciousness and then make decisions about these are the values I'm living by. Do I want to keep living by these values? Do I want to keep doing these things? And if I don't, what are the other options?
Exactly. Can I give you a little personal example?
Yeah.
So ages ago, health was not one of my main values because I was young. I was out having a good time, not a healthy time. Having a great time was what I wanted. And health wasn't part of it, except climbing up mountains and everything, but that was more fitness than health
Sure.
because you can be fit, but you can be very unhealthy, as I discovered. And in the last few years, I've realized that as I'm approaching 50 and going through menopause and the rest of it, health is actually pretty important. So I flipped that to be my main value.
Hmm.
And with that, over the last couple of years, I've lost close to 20 kilos now.
Hmm.
My mental health is as best as it has ever been. My fitness is massive.
Mhm.
I don't look like I'm 55. At least I don't think I look like I'm 55. It just might be my eyesight. I'm not too sure. But it's about, yeah, laugh, Philippa, laugh. But it's about how you can change your values, how you grow in life, because you
Yes.
are going to
Yeah.
grow in life. We get old, we grow, we change.
Mm.
So we
Mhm.
can figure out exactly what is important to us. And when we're new parents, our whole life changes and our
Yeah.
value system changes.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love the freedom to grow and the freedom to change your mind
Mm.
and say, I did the best that I could with that newborn when I was getting no sleep and was coming off of an emergency C-section and et cetera, et cetera. And she's 2 years old now, and I need to do something different. I'm a different person, and this process has changed me. And so I need to reevaluate my values or how I'm showing up or the words that I use or right, whatever that might be. But yeah, and that doesn't stop when our kids graduate. That continues for us as we get older and as we parent our kids in different seasons of life because we'll always be their parent. We'll always
Yep.
be a part of their life, I hope, and evolving our values and our presence with them is, I think, so key in maintaining that relationship because you can't have the same relationship with an 18-year-old that you do with your 2-year-old. That doesn't make sense, right? That's not logical. No one would tell you to do that. Um, but sometimes with 16-year-olds, we want to do that, right? We want to like hold them back and hold them down because we're afraid that that fear has kind of followed us. And finding the freedom to trust ourselves and trust our kids and trust what we've instilled in them is a process that requires growth, and it requires us to change too.
It does,
Absolutely.
doesn't it? It's just this massive, huge journey through life that is quite incredible. And
Yeah.
and it also has to do with identity, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
it? Identity is like is the foundation of it all. And
Yeah.
the way that we go through life, our identity changes. And the big one is with motherhood.
Yeah.
Massive. With the birth of a baby and the birth of a placenta, we are a totally different person. Bang. Thank you. Where's the manual? Thank goodness we have
It's
podcasts.
so nice. If there was a manual that
We have
would
podcasts. It's
have.
okay.
Well, and I have, my clients are always, and I say this about motherhood too. Um, as soon as you figure something out, they change. They need something different. You have to change with them, because it doesn't, even a few months sometimes make a difference in
Yeah.
what works and what doesn't in parenting.
I
Yeah.
literally
I've
had this
got this. No, I
conversation with
don't.
I had this conversation with my daughter just this week. You know, we were
Oh,
talking about her 1-year-old sleep, and I said, you know, you really need to provide her with you know, a space to sleep through the day, it consistently, so that she, you know, because I look after her a lot at night. I'm like, otherwise, by the time I get her, I don't have a boob I can put in her mouth. So you know, well, I do, but
It's
it's not going
working.
to get her what she
it's not
wants, right?
helpful.
So
Yeah.
It's not working.
so you know, so we need to create that. And she said, yeah, but you told me right at the beginning that you know, she would just sleep anywhere and do. And I said she would when she was a baby and a newborn, and you could just do what you wanted to do because she'd come along and
Mhm.
she'd sleep. She is not the same now, and as soon as you get accustomed to something, it is gonna change. And that's the only guarantee I can give you about this mothering thing, is that never get used to anything, because as soon as you do, it's going to change. I like what you said about identity, Pippa, and one of the things that I think we have an issue with, and Gabor Mate talks about this a lot, and I think he makes it really easy to understand. He talks about authenticity, and most of us don't know who we truly are, and that comes from having to change who we have been as a young child in order to fit with what our caregivers want from us. So if and I an example that was prominent in my own childhood was my dad would say, what are you crying about? If you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry for. Right. So the expectation or the message that I heard as a young child was, what you're crying about isn't valid or important. Your emotions are not valid and important. What you're feeling, so hence you're not, you know, you're not able to determine what's real or that of value. And so I had to change my behavior in order to create that or to maintain that secure attachment. And we do this to our children all the time, right? Where as parents will say things, and unless you're really aware of what it is you're saying and why you're saying it, and the question why, everyone should ask themselves, why do I respond that way? Why do I say that thing? You know, why do I think that way? Everything should be why, where does it come from? And do I want to continue with that? But when we think back to that authenticity, if we have had to change who we authentically are in order to maintain a connection, we lose that authenticity. And then we show up later on in our life in relationships, and we actually don't know who we are anymore because we've changed so much from that little person who was born into the world. In order to maintain secure attachments, we're willing to give up our you know,
Beautiful.
our
Yep.
identity for others. And it's why we end up with, you know, people who work like mad for a boss who would let them go tomorrow and not care. It's why we go into relationships that aren't good for us and we're willing to give that up. It's why as women we are willing to give up a lot for our children and put them first, even to their detriment, because we haven't self-cared. And we did a podcast on that just recently. But that lack of authenticity actually impacts how we relate to our children and what we expect our children to do to maintain the secure connection that they have. And
Absolutely.
if we don't even
Absolutely. Yeah.
recognize that we let go of that, then how do we recognize that we're asking them to?
And it's not only with our children, it's also with us and with everybody around us. It's like the core, the crud, the crust. The core is our innocent being, and that crust is that mask that is just layered on through the crud, through our life, through our families, through society. And it's a matter of finding out what that mask is and getting that little instrument and just nutting it out and finding the light, that beautiful light that's underneath that crust, underneath that mask.
Yeah.
One of my
Of
most
stuff.
Yeah.
That
One of my
we
favorite
just
parts.
layer on us. Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of the therapy that I use is introducing people to the truth of who they really are. And we do that in their very first session. And it is so powerful. And I just love to watch the tears stream down their face as they see who they were truly meant to be and just how powerful and incredible that woman is or that man is who is standing in front of them. And it is just, it's such a powerful experience. So for me, it was one of the most powerful experiences in my life to have got to go through that as a consumer, as a mum who was overwhelmed and burnt out. I was absolutely burnt out. I hit rock bottom. And I did this process, and to see that woman and to know who she was and that she was actually me in my most authentic self was life-changing. And I love that moment when I get to take clients through that, because it's so powerful to meet that person, because most of us have never met her or him before, at least not in our adult life.
And everybody has the ability to meet them. We all have the ability to meet our authentic self and to be the best person we can be, and to be the mothers, the best fathers, the best families we can possibly be. You've just laid it out in a beautiful, lovely, soaring acronym, Tiffani. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well,
Acronyms are great. I'm a nurse and a midwife. We can have whole conversations with acronyms.
In acronyms, yes. I've worked for the government and they speak in acronyms. They make it into words. So yeah, I did my own little acronym. But
Love it.
yeah, I love that. I love the authenticity is so important in parenthood, because if you're parenting from, and this was part of why I developed this process, this acronym, was because I signed up for parenting classes. I was like, okay, I need help. I can ask for help. I signed up for parenting classes and they gave me a bunch of scripts. Do this when your kid is doing this, doing X, do Y. And so I did those things and it didn't work. My kid could tell that it wasn't authentically me saying those things, that I was saying someone else's words, and it didn't work. But when I was able to claim who I am and who I was meant to be, and use my own words and use my own personality and my own flavors of things, and find the language that has meaning to me and that I want present in my family, then it was like a 180. Now, let's be clear, I still had a toddler. And so that, it still had its complicated moments, but I felt more grounded and empowered and And so therefore those moments I was able to sidestep. It didn't ruin my day. It didn't make me question myself. It just became a part of our rhythm that we just navigated every day, that was normal because it is normal for toddlers to push back on boundaries. It is normal for them to have big feelings, right? What's not, I mean, it is normal, but right, my response was the thing that needed to change and to be more authentic and to have more groundedness and centeredness. And so I love what you said, Philippa, about introducing people to their authentic self, and maybe for the first time that they get to meet that person because they are outside of those expectations of their own family. I have clients who come to me with a lot of abuse and neglect from their background, and them finding, I call it finding their voice. But it's the same, it's similar, right? It's being able to say, this is who I actually am. This is what I needed as a kid. This is what I should have gotten. And I can grieve that. And I can then also bring forward this beautiful soul that has so much potential and so much love to give in their family and in their life.
Yeah, well
It's a
said.
Yeah, it's about guiding our children, isn't it? Because we, like Pippa said, we are the leaders. And I was actually listening to a training through the week, and it was interesting. They were talking about the difference between um, leading staff and managing a business. So I like to think of my home like that. I manage my house, but I lead my family. I guide my children, and that's very different from feeling like I need to manage them. I don't manage my children. I guide and support and love and lead them. I
I love
manage my
that.
household.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And it is a beautiful differentiation between leadership and management.
Judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful differentiation. So what does leadership, this has just been a really interesting conversation, and we could go on forever, can't we?
We could talk for hours.
Yeah. Can I just ask both of you what leadership in as parents mean for you?
While you're thinking, Tiffani, I'll
Yeah.
go. For me, leadership really is around I'm a servant leader. I've always been a servant leader. I feel like I am right next to you. Being a leader is lonely. It's in lots of ways because you are in front, but I feel like there's also you've got to be one step ahead because you've got to show the way. But you need to, for me, you need to be within arm's reach. So if I put my hand back, my children can find my hand. And for me, it's about showing them the way, but also being able to hold their hand and guide them. So if they need help getting up that, think of it like rock climbing, right? Or like going up a mountain. If I need to help them up a step, up a rock, I put my hand back, they're right there. They can grab my hand and take. But that's a servant role. That is I am here to serve and support you. I'm not here to be your boss. I am not here to tell you what to do. I mean, when they're little, they need more instruction than when they're older, obviously. But instruction, I think, can be delivered in lots of different ways. And I'm not, I don't buy into permissive parenting either. So don't get me wrong there. But there are ways to do it. And it all comes back to, I think leadership is love, and leadership says, I've got you, follow me. I know where to go. And if I don't, I'll find out. Right? Because I'm not always right. And it's about being humble too, I think. Yeah.
Yes, love that. Love that. What about you, Tiffani?
Oh man, Philippa, you just like took some of the words right out of my mouth. I think servant leadership is the only way to go. That is definitely my style also. I think, and for me, what that looks like is speaking into strength, speaking into a child's areas of growth and empowering them to take risk, to try it, to make mistakes, and know that they have a safe place to fall. Know that when the mistake happens, that I'm not going to be their judge, and that they are safe to come to me and to talk about that and problem solve about that, and that I am their biggest cheerleader, but I will also defend them if needed. But I loved that analogy of the rock climbing, that because I think that has a lot to do with risk, right? That can be a little bit scary, but as a leader, you're going before, but maybe just a couple steps, so that when they reach back out and they need that support, we're right there with them.
Love this. Love this.
And I love that
And
soft
I
place to
love,
fall. Yeah,
yes, and
it's
I loved
100%
also
true.
what you said about empowering your kids, about not doing things for them, but showing them the way. And it's okay to make mistakes.
Totally. Yeah.
It is okay to make mistakes.
We talk a lot in our
As long as
household.
we, yeah, as long as we learn, I'm sorry, just as long as we learn
Okay.
from them. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and even if we don't learn anything from them, that it's okay to make them, that it's okay to have trial and error with some things. And I think a lot of parents think that they have to get it right the first time because that's how they were treated as kids, right? They had parents who said, it's not okay to make a mistake. It's not okay to get it wrong. That's not life. I mean, life is all about trial and error. We don't have it all pulled together as parents. We don't know what we're doing. We're all doing this for the first time. We're
And
trying to learn
even
together.
totally, and even when we're learning to walk, like I love this, the metaphor of learning to walk. We
Yeah.
just don't, as little kids, get up and start to run.
Yeah.
No, we get up, we fall down, we get up, we fall down. And
Right.
as parents, it's really interesting. As parents, what do we do when a child's learning to walk? Do we encourage them? Do we have that helping hand that's right there, helping them, supporting them, knowing, guiding them that they are on the right path?
Yeah.
We do that, don't we?
Yeah.
But as
I
we grow up in different circumstances, we forget about that.
I read a great quote yesterday at a meeting I was running. We have a quote at the end, and the quote was, I'm going to try and remember it properly, but ever tried, ever failed, no matter, fail again, fail better. Samuel someone. But it normalizes the idea that from failures we do comes success. If you haven't failed enough, you won't succeed. You there is
You haven't tried. You haven't tried enough.
failure is part of the learning process. And I love what you said there, Pippa. I actually had a conversation with a woman, an old family friend of my husband's, who was telling me she wouldn't use online grocery services because her sister had once had 5 kilos of apples delivered instead of 5 apples delivered. And I said to her, well, it's a bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, isn't it? Like, wouldn't you try like again? And she's like, well, I'm sorry, but like, it's just put a bad taste in my mouth. And I was like, but even babies who are learning to walk get up again, and they keep trying. They fall over, they fail, they get up and they go again. I said, babies don't innately give up. She's like, well, maybe some do. And I just left the conversation. I was like, you're very stubborn. But
And
and
then the people that are
clearly
walking around on
no,
skateboards.
right?
Yeah.
But sometimes we do give up on ourselves too soon. We give up on things too
Yeah.
soon because we perceive that we've failed, or whatever it might be. But we can't afford to, I don't think we can afford to do that as parents. I think as parents, we have to continue to be willing to do everything we can to ultimately have or be the best parent that we can be, so that our children have the very best of us at whatever that looks like in that moment, whatever the best of us is right then. And we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be giving the best of ourselves, whatever that looks like in that moment. And it will hopefully get better over time as we grow and learn and change and morph and become the butterfly we are meant to be. But we don't start there. And it's a journey. You know, I often say to people, when I had my first baby, I couldn't get out of the house before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know I didn't know how people did it. But by the time I had 4 children, I could get all of us out of the house looking amazing by 8 o'clock. I got better at it. Nothing else changed. I just got better at managing my time and everything that I was trying to put together. Nothing else changed. I had practice. Yeah.
Repetition, repetition, repetition. Oh, it works. It works, Philippa. It works. So, Tiffani, thank you so much for this lovely chat. What are your final thoughts? We've just covered so much.
Oh my gosh,
What
we've
is
covered so much.
Yeah. What is the best message that you would love to impart across through the Rockies, across the Pacific, all the way to the freezing cold air of Australia in wintertime?
I think my message really is that you don't give up on yourself as a mom. You're probably doing better than you think you are, and that there is joy to be found in every season, and reach out for support if you need it.
Amazing.
Love
And how
it.
can people work with
Beautiful.
you? How can they
So,
find you?
Yeah, on Instagram, I am Holy Living and Parenting. That's Holy with a WHOL. And then on TikTok, I am Tiffani Holy Living CC. So those are the main social medias that you can find me at, and happy to share links with you to put in your show notes if that is of interest.
Amazing.
So
Yes,
we'll
thank
do
you. We'll
that.
definitely list them.
And yeah.
Well,
beautiful.
thanks
Well, thank you
again.
so much, Tiffani, for enlightening the path across the Pacific. It's a very
Yeah.
lovely conversation, wasn't it, Philippa?
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah, definitely loved that. Thank you, Tiffani, for coming and joining us. And remember, folks, to subscribe and keep listening, keep sharing. If there's been something of value in here to you, remember that there might be something of value to someone else. So please share it with the people in your life. Because we're all about spreading that positive message, and really parenting by design is about thinking about all of these things and having these conversations so that we can implement them into our world. So please share away. Thank you again, Tiffani.
Totally. And you don't forget to soar.
Yes. Soar.
Final last words. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks, ladies. Bye for now.